These are facts you always believed that are complete lies. Number 34. Did you know the dark side of the moon isn't actually dark? You probably always pictured the moon kind of like this: the cool light side that gets exposed to the sun, and then the side that's always bathed in darkness. But no, the moon is tidally locked, so we only ever see one side of it. But since the Earth is always rotating and orbiting the sun, the so-called dark side gets just as much sun as the side we see. We just call it the dark side because we never get a chance to see it before we invented spaceships. From deep space to the deepest underbelly of the internet. Number 33. The deep web. It's a terrifying place full to the brim of drugs, weapons, assassins, and pictures and videos you really should not be looking at. At least that's what people want you to think. The portion of the deep web that features sinister and illegal content, known informally as the dark web, is only a fraction of the overall deep web. But if it's not a digital hive of scum and villainy, then what's actually lurking there? It's mostly academic libraries and databases, and most private email accounts and direct messages. Not exactly as cool and sexy as being cybercrime all the way down. Number 32. Everyone has an ancient Egypt phase, and we know that that is true because we have seen the analytics on our Egypt videos. But a lot of what people think they know about Egyptians just isn't true, starting with King Tut's curse. As in, there wasn't ever a curse inscribed on Tutankhamun's tomb. This was made up by early 20th century writers who were looking to sex up stories of pharaoh grave robbing for an Egyptology-hungry public. Number 31. There is another lie about ancient Egypt that's almost as ancient as the pyramids themselves, that those giant triangular tombs were built by slaves. There's a lot of evidence that skilled workers and craftsmen, these crews fed some of the best food all around, lived in organized workers' villages, and even left their team names on the pyramids in tags like the Drunkards of Menkaure and the Followers of the Powerful White Crown of Khufu. Oh, and also, we hope none of you need to hear this, but they weren't built by aliens. If that's your theory, then you might need to cut back on your History Channel marathons. Let's not leave the ancient world just yet. Number 30. Ever felt like the past was just a little bit classier? In our world of TikTok, AI, brain rot, garbage, it's easy to idolize the beautiful white marble of ancient Greek and Roman statues. So simple, yet so profound. Except that is a lie. These statues weren't plain and white when they were built. The ancient Greeks and the Romans actually loved painting them in awful gaudy colors. They were more like something you'd see on the show floor of a Vegas casino than a classy antiquity that you're probably imagining. The eye-searing paint jobs just faded over time as the statues stuck around. While we're in ancient Rome, there aren't any Romans more famous or infamous than Julius Caesar. Number 29. As we all know, Julius Caesar was so popular that the Senate stabbed him to death for his trouble, including his close friend and confidant Brutus. And his famous last words were, "Et tu, Brute?" meaning, "You too, Brutus?" But here's the thing, he never actually said that. If Caesar said anything while he was being jumped by the toga brigade, it might have been the more condescending, "You too, child?" But in all likelihood, he might have just been screaming since he was being stabbed by a bunch of guys all at the same time. From togas to stripes. Number 28. The B-movie lied to you. Shocking, we know. Typically, this 2007 animated Jerry Seinfeld comedy about a bee suing the human race and entering an implied sexual relationship with a human woman is a real bastion of truth. But actually, it repeats a common misconception in its opening moment. According to all known laws of aviation, a bee shouldn't be able to fly. This just is not true. It's a lie that was likely popularized by a 1930s book on fixed-wing aircraft that somehow endured into the modern day. Who would have thought that bumblebees and pre-World War II fighter planes had different mechanisms for flight? Number 27. Some like it hot, but those who don't will tell you to avoid chili pepper seeds like the plague. After all, they are the hottest part of the pepper. The truth is, the seeds get a bad rap, and the actual hottest part of a chili pepper is the placental tissue, or the pith. That is a part that connects the seeds to the rest of the pepper. It's the hottest because it contains the highest concentration of capsaicin, the active ingredient that makes chili so spicy. What's hotter than the placental tissue of a chili pepper? The sun! Number 26. You know that yellow star that gives our solar system its gravitational center? Well, it's not actually yellow. The sun actually emits the full spectrum of visible light, so if you're looking at it from outside of our atmosphere, it seems pure white. But down here on the Earth, the atmosphere scatters the blue and violet light away, which makes the sun look yellow to us overall. Some supposed facts that are actually lies are obvious. You would need to be as blind as a bat to miss them. Number 25. Bats aren't actually blind. Every species of bats has working eyes. and around 70% of them rely on echolocation as their main form of nighttime navigation. But fruit bats are a notable exception. They have pretty sick night vision, so if someone calls you blind as a fruit bat, they're actually paying you a compliment. Number 24. The Dark Ages were a pretty nasty time, full of disease, war, crime, and of course insanely low life expectancy. But that is another one of those popular historical lies. As Mark Twain once said, there are lies, damn liars, and statisticians. And in this case, the idea that people didn't live that long in the Middle Ages was a misleading artifact of factoring in the high infant mortality rate. When you were born, you had a life expectancy of about 30, but if you survived to 21, you'd have a life expectancy of around 64, which isn't really great by today's standards, but a far cry from being considered an old man in your 20s. But nasty stuff happening to people isn't a relic of the past. Number 23. The 20th century brought us the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, which may have caused up to 60,000 total casualties once long-term cancer deaths are included. It was a grim reminder that while nuclear power has a huge potential to meet our energy needs, it also carries the highest stakes of any energy source. But that is just another lie. Statistically, nuclear power is actually one of the safest methods of energy generation out there. There are substantially fewer deaths proportionally from nuclear power per unit of produced energy than in conventional forms of power, even when adjusting for scale. So next time someone tells you that nuclear power is just too dangerous to be viable on a wider scale, remember what you heard here instead. Number 23. Let's throw in a playground classic. No matter what your buddy Braden tells you, Adidas doesn't stand for All Day I Dream About Sports, or All Day I Dream About Soccer, or even All Day I Dream About Sex. This common misconception is called Acronym, a fancy schmancy linguistic word for an acronym made out of a word that was never intended to be an acronym. Adidas is actually just a contraction of the founder's name, Adolf or Adi Dassler. We're not done with backronyms though, and this little misconception is actually going to make your whole life feel like a lie. Number 21. SOS, the emergency signal for people lost at sea, does not stand for Save Our Souls or Save Our Ship. It doesn't actually stand for anything. Those 3 letters are actually picked just because they couldn't be confused for anything else in Morse code. 3 dots, 3 dashes, and then 3 dots with no pauses in between. You weren't just wrong about SOS, you were also wrong about Wi-Fi. Number 20. Someone at some point has probably told you that it's short for wireless fidelity, since Hi-Fi stands for high fidelity. But no, you've been duped. Like SOS, it's another thing that doesn't really stand for anything. It was chosen out of a list of 10 brainstormed brand names to replace the much less catchy technical term IEEE 802.11b direct sequence, which doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. Another area that is full of myths thanks to TV and movies is crime and punishment. Number 19. When you think of huge international crime syndicates, you picture drugs, weapons, and people being smuggled in shipping containers. So who takes down the criminals operating on that kind of global scale? The brave agents of Interpol, kicking ass and taking names across the globe. But that ain't it. Interpol isn't some crime-fighting department like the FBI. Their job is facilitating communication between different international police services. You just won't ever see someone from Interpol flashing a badge and pulling out cuffs at crime scenes. Here is a commonly believed crime and punishment lie that might literally get someone killed. Number 18. It is a total lie that you need to wait 24 hours before you file a missing persons report. This is a complete fabrication to make TV shows more dramatic. If there's any evidence of violence at play, you need to tell the authorities immediately. Criminologists generally agree that the first 72 hours are vital in getting a missing person back alive. So if you blow the first 24 sitting on your hands, you've almost slashed your chances of getting your friend or loved one back alive in half. But it isn't just modern crime and punishment that the media tries to brainwash you on. Number 17. Picture a Viking for a second. Big Nordic guy, long beard and axe, a helmet with horns, and let us just stop you right there. Viking helmets never had horns because that would be insanely impractical in battle. They would keep getting caught on stuff and knocked off, which in a combat situation could very quickly get you killed. It's more pure movie magic. The Vikings weren't the only group who would get a raw deal when it came to their clothes being misrepresented. Number 16. The Pilgrims who colonized the US, they didn't actually wear all black and have hats with big buckles on them, despite what every Thanksgiving illustration would have you believe. The Puritans, among the next wave of settlers, were the ones who preferred the all-black look to emphasize their modesty. and the hat buckles were added to imagery in the 19th century. They were shorthand for quaintness, rather than a realistic representation of how anyone actually looked. Number 15. Sometimes it feels like there are more lies out there than there is sand in the Sahara Desert. But that isn't actually saying much. Most of the world-famous Sahara Desert isn't actually sand, it's rocks. But that doesn't exactly have the same ring to it. Here's a question for you. Would you rather starve and dehydrate to death in a desert like the Sahara, or drown in the ocean? Number 14. Really try to picture drowning for a second. Panicking, thrashing, screaming for help at the top of your lungs. It's probably how you picture drowning, and you would be wrong. The scary thing most people don't know about drowning is that it is silent. It is in the body's interest to keep your mouth closed to avoid taking on water. Ironically, this is actually what leads to many drowning deaths not being noticed until it's too late. You might just sink beneath the waves without making a sound. Number 13. Anyone who's ever taken a basic course in exercise would have heard painful aches from lactic acid buildup in your muscles can last for days. But it's actually not really true. Lactic acid levels will return to normal within 20 to 120 minutes after your exercise session ends. Those lingering aches are more likely to be caused by muscle micro-trauma that you experience when you're not used to exercise. That's why it hurts less the more experienced you get. Number 12. Oh, and another little lie connected to exercise is the value of stretching. You should still stretch to avoid injury. But it's actually a myth that stretching will have any effects on delayed onset muscle soreness, or DOMS, which is the official name for those aches and pains that you feel the day after an intense workout sesh. Even if you experience aches and pains, it's still valuable to work out and maintain a healthy lifestyle and stave off the inevitable end. Number 11. If you're cremated, you technically are not turned into ashes, or at least it's not ashes that your relatives will be taking home in the urn. Once you're cremated, the actual ashes will fall through the grate below, and all that'll be left are your bones. At this point, your burnt bones are placed inside a cremulator, a kind of extremely powerful industrial blender that grinds them up into dust. And this ground-up bone dust, called cremains, are what ends up in your urn, not your ashes. And that's a fun fact that you can tell Grandma next time you see the urn full of Grandpa's cremains while you're visiting. Cremation isn't the only piece of misinformation about burning human bodies out there, though. Number 10. One of the most enduring and disturbing images of the Salem witch trials are innocent women being burned at the stake after being accused of witchcraft. But this didn't actually happen. They absolutely did murder a bunch of innocent women over phony witchcraft accusations. But none of the people executed in this mass hysteria were actually burned. 19 were executed by hanging, and around 5 died while in prison. One particularly unlucky accused witch by the name of Giles Corey was slowly crushed by having rocks piled up onto his body one by one. His reported last words were, "More weight." If one of your loved ones was executed as a witch, it'd be a pretty tough time for you emotionally. Number 9. We've all heard of the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And maybe you will by pure chance experience those feelings in that order. But the idea that those 5 stages are in any way a generalizable or scientific approach to grief is totally baloney. Despite the 5 stages being a popular cliché, grief is a highly individual experience, and chances are no 2 people will ever reliably experience it in the same way. Oh, we're sorry, did you have trouble hearing that? We can help with that. Number 8. Waxy buildup in your ears? You should grab one of those cotton Q-tips and clean those ear holes out. We all did it as kids, right? But we really shouldn't have, because Q-tips in your ears actually have literally no medical benefits. In fact, they actually pose a serious medical risk, like damage to your sensitive inner ears if you probe too far. So if someone does try to stick one of those little death traps in your ears, you're within your rights to defend yourself. Just make sure that when you're defending yourself, you don't use the classic assault rifle 15 to do it. Number 7. The full name of the well-known AR-15 is actually Armalite Rifle, a nod to the weapon's creator. Now, you can stop saying Assault Rifle 15 or Automatic Rifle 15 and driving all your gun enthusiast friends insane in the process. Maybe all this talk of rifles and burning and Q-tips is making you think a little bit about mortality and the great beyond. Number 6. Maybe as a Christian or a Jew, you feel the need to atone for the original sin of Adam and Eve eating that apple in the Garden of Eden. Except the idea that it was an apple was something made up later. In the original book of Genesis, observed in both Christianity and Judaism, Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden for eating the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge, but it's never actually been said that the fruit was an apple or any other particular kind of fruit. But these aren't the only religions plagued by common misconceptions. Number 5. What do you think a fatwa is? If you've only ever heard it on the news, well, you might think it's some special kind of absolute Muslim assassination request. But that is a crazy oversimplification of what it really means. A fatwa is a non-binding religious opinion, an interpretation of Islamic law released by a scholar of Islam. Because they are very much not universal, a lot of the time you'll also see fatwas clash, and your average Muslim would have no way of keeping track of them all. The idea that fatwas are like some wanted dead or alive poster in the Old West came purely from the Iranian Ayatollah Khomeini declaring a fatwa that the writer Salman Rushdie deserved to be killed for the content of his novel The Satanic Verses. And it's probably not the only Arabic term that you have a wrong definition for. Number 4. You might have heard that jihad means holy war, but again, it's more complicated than that. Jihad better translates to struggle, which can be personal, spiritual, or even internal. The more specific jihad by the sword or lesser jihad are the only expressions of the term that mean literal military conflict. Maybe you're oriented to a more Eastern flavor, something like Buddhism perhaps. Number 3. Who couldn't love the Buddha? That jolly smiling guy with the bald head and the big old round belly that you could rub for good fortune. You don't get any special prizes if you rub a statue of Jesus' belly, except maybe a funny look from the priest in attendance. Except this isn't Buddha, as in the sense of Siddhartha Gautama, the guy who found enlightenment while meditating under the Bodhi tree. The jolly gentleman is actually a specifically Chinese Buddhist folk hero named Budai, who clearly did not share Siddhartha Gautama's attitude toward fasting and yoga. If you spent all your time sitting under a tree and meditating, there's a good chance you would get sick. Number 2. You can't catch a cold just by being cold, but at least we know that you can get over a cold by taking plenty of vitamin C, oranges, orange juice, vitamin supplements, all the good stuff. But that is just another one of those lies. Even though we've all heard it 1,000 times, vitamin C won't help you speed run a cold. While incorporating vitamin C into your diet along with other key vitamins and minerals will help you fortify your health and immune system over time, if there was any actual cheat code for getting out on the other side of a cold, we would be doing it all the time, because colds suck. You know who wouldn't have been bothered by a cold? The mad monk, Grigory Rasputin. Number 1. Rasputin was a spooky guy, and he was definitely angling toward banging the Tsar's wife. He made such a stir that a group of conspirators in the royal family invited him to a dinner where he was given poisoned cakes and wine, and it had no effect. He was then shot and somehow survived, and eventually drowned after being chased into a nearby body of water. Rasputin was almost unkillable, and it had to be due to the almost mystical power over life and death that he seemed to command. Except that is all a lie. The autopsy showed that the conspirators just shot Rasputin and that killed him. Just like it'd kill anyone else. The legendary tale of Rasputin's insane death came from the memoir of one of his killers, Prince Felix Yusupov, who had every reason to exaggerate the story to make it more interesting and sell more books. Because when has the truth ever gotten in the way of a good story? Want to continue dunking on your most gullible friends? Check out our OG, Facts You Believe That Are Actually Lies, or watch this instead.